Welcome to the 5th video in my Jujutsu Kaisen arc analysis series, and in this video we're going to be talking about the 6th arc of Jujutsu Kaisen, the Death Painting arc. This arc follows the first years of Jujutsu High as they are tasked with investigating several strange murders which appear to be linked. This arc follows up with the events of the prior arc as Mahito puts to use some of the cursed objects that he had stolen, as he brings 2 of the death paintings that he had stolen to life, as they serve as one of the key antagonistic forces of this story arc. The first years of Jujutsu High not only have to investigate these mysterious murders, but they are also going to be up against these death paintings. This arc has somewhat of a focus on the character of Megumi, as we learn a bit more about the circumstances of how his sister may have been cursed, as well as the investigation into these mysterious murders taking us to Megumi's former school, where we get to see the characters interacting with his former classmates. In typical Jujutsu Kaisen fashion, a lot occurs within this short story arc, so let's dive into the events of this story arc and analyze what Akutami was trying to convey to us. By the end of this video, you'll have an understanding of all of the battles that take place during this arc, as well as understanding the motives of the antagonists, and how the events of this arc not only impact Megumi, but also Yuji and Nobara. Before the video begins, only 79% of the people who watch the content on my channel are subscribed. So if you enjoy these videos and want to continue seeing more, then definitely help to support me and my channel by subscribing and turning on the bell notifications. Thank you for your support, and now let's dive into the topic of this video. The Death Painting arc takes place between chapters 55 to 64, and it is the final story arc that is adapted into season 1 of Jujutsu Kaisen, covering episodes 22 to 24 of the anime. It's an excellent follow-up arc to the Kyoto Goodwill event, and it throws our familiar cast of characters into the deep end, as their investigation into these mysterious murders leads them to several life or death battles. The Death Painting arc has some similarity to the Cursed Womb arc, in the sense that they are once again facing off against another special grade cursed spirit that has absorbed one of Sukuna's fingers. But after everything that has occurred within the story up until this point, and all of the training that the characters have undergone, it's going to be interesting to see how these characters react to facing off against the death paintings and the special grade cursed spirit. So the arc begins with the first years investigating some strange deaths. Each of the victims had died in a very similar manner, leading investigators to believe that these deaths may be linked. The victims were found stabbed to death at the entrances of their homes, and similarly all 3 of these individuals who were killed had recently complained to their building management that the door to their apartment wasn't locking properly, and they had returned home to find it unlocked on several occasions. They eventually learned that all 3 of these victims had attended the same junior high school as Megumi. When Megumi suggests to speak to a classmate who had known the 3 victims, they find out that this individual too had died in a similar manner to the other 3 victims. He had been killed in front of the entrance to his home. We eventually learned that these 4 victims had partaken in the Yasohachi Bridge bungee jumping. Megumi explains that the Yasohachi Bridge is known for suicides, and it is a hotspot for paranormal activity. Back when these 4 victims had attended the junior high school, it was popular to bungee jump off of that bridge, and to make things even more creepy, they had been doing this in the middle of the night. It was described as somewhat of a test of courage. The teachers and parents of these 4 students had found out about this after one day these 4 students did not show up to school. After the school had contacted the parents, they find out that they hadn't come home from the night before. After some searching, they had found the 4 students laying unconscious under the bridge. After gaining consciousness, the 4 of them apparently didn't remember anything. During this time, Mahito and Geto bring to life the Cursed Womb death paintings by placing them into human vessels. This occurs while the first years visit Yasohachi Bridge to continue their investigation, assuming that a cursed spirit that resides underneath the bridge is responsible for the murders of these 4 victims. Yuji and the others struggle to find any evidence of a cursed spirit at the bridge, which temporarily puts a stop to their investigation. It is then that we learn when Megumi's older sister had attended junior high, she had also gone to Yasohachi Bridge at night. This means that if they do not find the cursed spirit that is responsible for these murders, then the life of Megumi's older sister Sumiki is also at risk. Yuji notes how emotionally distraught Megumi becomes after he learns that his sister's life is in danger. Now this explains to us the actions that Megumi takes within this story arc, and why he is so emotionally invested into the outcome of this investigation. From what we know about the investigation so far is that the cursed spirit attacks its victims within a certain time limit. It's no use on relying on Gojo Gojo-sensei because he is away for a week, and Megumi realizes that he cannot sit back and wait for Gojo to return. This curse spirit, whatever it is, needs to be exorcised immediately. It is at this point that Megumi starts to distance himself from Yuji and Nobara, and he starts to take matters into his own hands. After Megumi tells the two of them to go home, he returns to Yasohachi Bridge, after realizing that the curse spirit must be below the bridge. But he is then accompanied by Yuji and Nobara, who saw through his lies, as they scold him for never telling anything about himself to them, because after all, they are a team and they need to work together. They are aware that whatever is going on is deeply impacting Megumi. They reassure him by saying that he doesn't need to share what is going on with them, but he should at least depend on them as friends. We are aware that Megumi's older sister is bedbound. She appears to be in somewhat of a coma. She is pretty much laying there defenseless, waiting for the curse spirit to attack her, and it is for this reason that Megumi needs to exorcise this curse spirit immediately. Megumi is able to deduce the correct sequence of conditions that need to be met in order to pass through the barrier of the curse. They enter into the domain of the curse spirit. They realize that the curse that has inhabited Yasohachi Bridge is a mole-like curse, as it pokes its head out of several areas of the bridge. Just before they can face off against this curse spirit, one of the death paintings, Kechizu, arrives. Megumi tells Nobara and Yuji to focus on the death painting, while he focuses on the Yasohachi Bridge curse spirit. Yuji begins battling Kechizu while Megumi and Nobara attempt to exorcise the mole-like curse spirit. But then another one of the death paintings arrives, as the older brother of Kechizu, Eso, takes Nobara out of the curse spirit's domain. Kechizu also leaves the curse spirit's domain, as Yuji is left with no choice but to follow him, leaving Megumi on his own to face off against the mole-like curse spirit within its domain. We learn that the death paintings Iso and Kechizu were tasked by Mahito to retrieve Sukuna's fingers. After Megumi is easily able to take out the mole-like curse spirit, it transforms into a special grade curse spirit, as we learn that it has absorbed one of Sukuna's fingers. It has a strikingly similar appearance to the special grade curse spirit that appeared within the detention center during the Cursed Womb arc. Megumi realizes that the Yasohachi Bridge curse spirit had only attacked his victims from the month of June. After questioning why now after all of these years, he realizes that the curse spirit was activated in the same month that Yuji had swallowed Sukuna's finger, leading to him manifesting and bringing to life the legendary curse spirit Ryumen Sukuna. This appears to have activated the Yasohachi Bridge curse spirit, thus explaining why it is such a powerful curse spirit, because it is linked to Sukuna. Megumi now begins his battle with the special grade curse spirit, who is also a bearer of one of Sukuna's fingers. He learns that this special grade curse spirit is far more powerful than the one that they had faced off against within the detention center. After being soundly beaten by the special grade, Megumi lets go of all of his restrictions and restraints. He allows his cursed energy to flow throughout the entirety of his body, as he ends up manifesting an incomplete form of his domain expansion for the very first time. After breaking through his limits, Megumi is able to defeat the special grade curse spirit, proving that he is indeed far more powerful than he thinks he is. And this also confirms Sukuna's initial assessment of Megumi right at the start of the story, where he had expressed interest in his character. After Megumi defeats the special grade, we get some backstory for his character in chapter 59. We learn that Megumi and Sumiki's parents had gotten together when they were very young, but they had separated just as quickly as they had gotten married. We learned that Megumi's father had gained some divorce money by selling his son to the Zenin family. We learned that it was Gojo who had eventually come to Megumi's aid and had taken him under his wing, promising that they would work together as sorcerers in the future. We learned that because of Megumi's early life experiences, he had started to resent everybody but his older sister. A heavy emphasis is placed upon Megumi believing that she was a good person, but he is left confused after he realizes that she was cursed. The identity of the curse spirit is unknown, but like multiple cases throughout the country, Megumi's older sister was cursed, and they had no idea as to why. The after effects of this curse are that Tsumiki is now in a never-ending cycle of sleep. Akutami perfectly conveys to us the relationship between Megumi and his older sister through manga panels which contain nothing but text. The white manga panels are Tsumiki speaking, while the black are Megumi, as she states that she would rather spend her time thinking about those that she loves instead of cursing them, and Megumi comments that his older sister was always smiling and saying nice things. And the next panel has Tsumiki saying that it's not a bad thing for individuals to not forgive others, because this is how Megumi shows his way of kindness. And in the next panel, Megumi comments on his sister's words, as he states that she was able to spin his shortcomings into positives. When they were both in school together, Megumi would get into fights with people who were bullying others. His older sister would get upset by this, and it was for the fact that Megumi was hurting others. Megumi's justification was that they were bad people, but Tsumiki wanted Megumi to show mercy to them. Megumi was aware that his older sister would get upset whenever he had hurt somebody. He was getting annoyed by this because it was hypocritical. He had believed that she shouldn't have been annoyed with him, because after all, he was helping those who were being bullied. But eventually Megumi came to realize that he was wrong, because just like how how Megumi had chosen to help people who were being bullied. His older sister Sumiki had chosen to protect Megumi and had wanted him to stay out of harm's way. Megumi was realizing that he was being immature. He apologizes and just wants his sister to wake up already. He is aware that all he did was get rid of the curse that was inhabiting Yasohachi Bridge. It's not going to change the fact that his sister is still sleeping, and the curse that is causing this is a separate matter. I love this arc because of how much insight it gives into Megumi's character, how we learn about his early life and his relationship with his sister, as well as how he was taken into the care of Gojo. He is a fascinating character who definitely needed expanding upon, and I'm relieved that we got so much information about Megumi's backstory within this arc. It helps us to better understand his motives and desires for the upcoming chapters. And in addition to this, it also makes you care a lot for the character, as we already know so much about Yuji's character, and you have to give credit to Akutami. Whereas so many other authors will focus on developing the protagonist, he has gone out of his way to develop Megumi's character through this story arc, as at the start he was taking matters into his own hands, but then realized that he can depend on his friends. And when he realizes that his sister's life is in danger, he comes to accept that he was wrong and he apologizes to his sister for being immature when they were both attending junior high school. Megumi ends up falling asleep as we now turn our attention over to Yuji and Nobara facing off against Iso and Kechisu. The death paintings quickly become aware of the presence of Sukuna's finger after Megumi defeats the special grade and gets out of the cursed spirit's barrier. Similarly to the Kyoto Goodwill event, Yuji has another team up during this arc, as he teams up with Nobara to face off against the two death paintings. Yuji and Nobara end up being attacked by an ability of the death paintings called Rot Technique Decay. Their bodies start decaying for the point that they were attacked, as Iso tells them that Yuji has about 15 minutes while Nobara has 10 minutes to live. The ability of the death paintings is decomposition. If they don't do anything about it, then by the morning all that will remain of them will be bones. In chapter 60 we get some backstory about the cursed womb death paintings. We learn that each of these cursed wombs had originated from a woman who was bearing a child with mixed blood, both cursed spirit and human. They were all mysterious pregnancies. We learn that these cursed wombs were being collected by one of the most evil Jujutsu sorcerers in history, Noritoshi Kamo. There were 9 such pregnancies where a child was born from a cursed spirit and a human. All 9 of them were aborted, and records of what happened to the mother were destroyed. The death painting wombs numbers 1 to 3 were cursed objects worthy of special grade. For 150 years, the 3 death paintings were kept prisoner in glass jars. They had only known of each other's existence. They were sealed away, surviving only for each other. We learned that Mahito had stolen these 3 death paintings, and after being incarnated by Mahito and Geto, they agreed to work with them. The 3 brothers share an incredibly close bond with each other, as they state that the 3 of them are one. I think it's excellent that we get to learn some backstory about the world of Jujutsu Kaisen through the midpoint of this battle. We learned about the existence of Noritoshi Kamo and how the cursed wombs were formed. Just as we find out all of this information, we cut back to the battle, as Nobara impales herself with the ability Straw Doll Technique Resonance. By doing this, she is able to counterattack against the death paintings, as they both appear to be hurt from Nobara's self-inflicted injury. She continues to use her ability to stun the 2 death paintings. Yuji then has the opportunity to unleash a barrage of attacks against Kechisu. Iso is left with no choice but to undo the decay technique in order to save his younger brother. But the after effects of the technique remain with both Nobara and Yuji. The pain that they received from the deactivated technique helps to sharpen their focus. This focus allows them to tap into the sparks of black as they both unleash the ability Black Flash. Both brothers are severely injured. Kechisu attempts to attack Nobara with one final strike, but she ends up exorcising the cursed spirit. In chapter 62, we see Eso crying for his fallen younger brother. Yuji is surprised to see Eso crying over his younger brother, as he is shocked that a cursed spirit could have tears of affection, and this results in Yuji hesitating to deliver the final blow. In this instance, Nobara had also stopped fighting, as the 2 of them realized that they weren't up against cursed spirits, they were fighting against flesh and blood. Eso, who is injured, aborts a speeding truck as he tries to escape. Nobara stops the death painting by impaling its severed arm with the ability Straw Doll Technique Resonance. This stuns the cursed spirit, giving Yuji enough time to deliver the final blow to Eso, but before he does so, he apologizes to him. At this time, the older brother of Eso and Kechisu, who is called Chozo, learns that his younger brothers have been killed. He is deeply impacted by this news, as he learns from Mahito and Geto that his younger brothers were killed by the first years of Jujutsu High. I want to talk about this exchange that occurs between Nobara and Yuji at the start of chapter chapter 63, after they had killed the two brothers. Firstly, let's look at how Akutami draws this within the manga. He has 4 pages where a back and forth occurs in a very unique manner, as one page is dedicated to Nobara's expressions, and the other page is dedicated to Yuji's expressions, and I've never really seen this done in any other manga. They are both talking to each other and reflecting on killing flesh and blood people. This conversation is occurring because despite them being curses, the two of them had cried for one another, and Yuji can't help but to feel upset about this, as he speaks to Nobara about his feelings. But Nobara on the other hand tries to reassure Yuji by saying that things like this happen, especially as a Jujutsu sorcerer. You are limited to the number of people that you can save as an individual. Yuji feels guilt because Eso was crying for his younger brother who had died in front of him. Despite the fact that he is relieved that both himself and Nobara had survived, he is saddened by the fact that tears were shed because of their actions. Nobara agrees and states that the two of them were accomplices in the murder of these two brothers. It's a really touching conversation, and it highlights the maturity of these two characters. In most shonen series, the protagonist or side characters may end up killing an enemy, but we hardly ever get to talk about the feelings of taking another life. Jujutsu Kaisen excels in this conversation, and I have to give Akutami credit for writing into a story the value of a life, whether if it is a good life or a bad life. You can see that Yuji's heart is in the right place, but like Nobara had stated, sometimes it cannot be helped, especially in their line of work. As this story arc wraps up, Sukuna tricks Yuji into eating the finger that they had just retrieved. 2 days later, Gojo hears about how his students had handled the investigation, and he is impressed by them. Gojo then takes it upon himself to enlist the help of both Meimei and Aoi Todo, so that they can recommend the 5 students Yuji, Megumi, Nobara, Maki, and Panda to be upgraded to grade 1 Jujutsu sorcerer status. In chapter 63, Megumi also speaks to Nobara, as he explains how Yuji consuming the finger of Sukuna was a trigger for the Yasohachi Bridge deaths. Yuji had consumed the finger of Sukuna in order to help Megumi initially, but despite this, his actions had resulted in the cursed spirit residing within Yasohachi Bridge being activated, and thus leading to the murders of 4 people. Megumi tells Nobara not to tell Yuji this, as he will be upset if he had learned about this, but we then cut to Sukuna speaking to Yuji, as he tells him that it's all his fault, and it's because Yuji had consumed Sukuna's fingers that the spirits that Sukuna had cut up and scattered have now awoken. He laughs at Yuji's desire to help people, as he states that it is because of Yuji that people are dying. In response to this, Yuji perfectly complements what Megumi had stated to Nobara, as he tells Sukuna not to say a word of this to Megumi. Chapter 64, the final chapter of the death painting arc, ends on a light-hearted note, as Nobara ends up meeting one of Yuji's old classmates. She is called Yuko Ozawa. Nobara finds out that she has a crush on Yuji, and before long Megumi ends up finding out, and the two of them try to come up with a plan for her to reunite with Yuji. The thing about Yuko is that when she had known Yuji, she was quite overweight, but now she has more of a slender appearance, and she believes that she can win over Yuji this way. When Yuji meets her, he immediately identifies her. We get a flashback to when Yuji was in school, as he is asked if he likes anybody in his class, and if he had to pick someone, he states he would choose Yuko Ozawa. The other students comment that she is fat, but Yuji doesn't focus on her superficial appearance, as he comments that her behavior is very elegant, especially the way that she writes. Yuko ends up appreciating how sincere Yuji was with his words, and she realizes by approaching Yuji now with this new physical appearance, she too is being shallow. So because of this, she decides not to reveal her feelings about Yuji to him. And in this chapter, we even get some hints of Nobara maybe having some feelings for Yuji, as she is annoyed that Yuji isn't after her, and how she has a couple of moments where her heart skips a beat at the mention of Yuji. It's a really comedic and light-hearted chapter after several chapters of intense action, and it's one that I really enjoyed. And this brings us to the end of the death painting arc. We are also coming to an end to all of the material that was adapted in the first season of the Jujutsu Kaisen anime, so all of the videos from this point will now be covering manga exclusive content, with the next video in my Jujutsu Kaisen arc analysis series focusing on Gojo's past. So for the next couple of Jujutsu Kaisen videos, we'll be taking a break from Yuji and the others, as I will also be making a video covering Jujutsu Kaisen Volume 0 in the month of December, because this is also the month where the first Jujutsu Kaisen movie will be releasing, a movie that is going to be adapting Volume 0 of Jujutsu Kaisen, so there is no better time than now to discuss the story of Yuta Okotsu, and I hope that all of these videos will serve as the perfect build-up to the next main story arc of Jujutsu Kaisen, which is the Shibuya Incident Arc, the longest story arc of Jujutsu Kaisen, and one that is revered as one of the best manga story arcs of our modern time. So I hope you stick around for the upcoming Jujutsu Kaisen content on this channel, and I look forward to seeing all of you in my next Jujutsu Kaisen arc analysis video. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more like it, then please consider supporting my channel on Patreon. I have multiple tiers with rewards including access to an exclusive Discord server, video scripts, as well as being the first to know about unreleased upcoming videos. Thank you for your time, and whatever you choose to contribute I will appreciate, and it will mean a lot to me.